The House will now advance to the fifth order of business, report of standing committees. The House is at the fifth order.
In the matter of Representative Priscilla Giddings, following our investigation and public hearing held pursuant to House Rule 45, the committee unanimously finds by clear and convincing evidence that Representative Priscilla Giddings engaged in conduct unbecoming a representative, which is detrimental to the integrity of the House as a legislative body. As a member of the House and as a citizen, Representative Giddings is entitled to exercise her First Amendment right, the right of freedom of speech. Therefore, the Ethics Committee unanimously rejected the Cheney complaint. Like all citizens, she is not free from consequences of abusing or imprudently exercising that right in connection with a personnel matter. Exposing an alleged victim's personal information may be construed as retaliation, could lead to bullying, and can cause such a chilling effect that future victims do not come forward. Representative Giddings engaged in conduct unbecoming when pressed about the Facebook post in the Aaron Von Ellinger hearing. Her conduct was compounded when she was evasive, combative, and not forthright in her sworn testimony before the Ethics Committee and did not offer evidence to contradict the evidence presented by the 24 representatives who filed the complaint. Her repeated lying, half-truths, and total disrespect for the Ethics Committee and the Ethics Committee process is conduct that cannot be tolerated. The Ethics Committee is comprised of her peers who have been tasked with the very difficult responsibility to investigate ethical violations and report their findings to the House. This obligation was made more difficult by her conduct. Therefore, we unanimously recommend that the House of Representatives censure Representative Giddings with the restrictions and conditions that she be removed from her seat on the House Commerce and Human Resources Committee, done this 31st day of August 2021, signed Sage Dixon, John Gannon, Wendy Horman, Brent Crane, and John McCrosty.
Gentleman from Guam.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adopt the report of the Ethics Committee.
Gentleman from 16.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion before us to accept the committee's report. Is there debate? Debate from Guam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from 1 stand for question?
Will the gentleman yield?
The gentleman does not yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if someone else from the committee could answer a question.
So the ball is in your court, ma'am.
Okay, so then, Mr. Speaker, I ask that the gentleman from District 17 from the committee would answer a question.
The gentleman is not here this morning. He's absent.
Okay.
He's one of our absents. I assume he'll be here, but he's not here now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would request that, I would ask that the good woman from District 30 might answer a question.
Will the lady yield?
The lady does not yield.
Lady from 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering if you would yield to a question.
I will not yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just trying to get a question answered about the finances for this committee. So then I would wondering if there's someone from this body that would yield to a question about the money spent for this committee.
I'm going to call that question out of order. You can direct it to any one of the members, but flock shop is out of order. You have the floor to debate.
I'm not ready to debate at this time.
Is there further debate? Hearing none?
Then I guess I will debate, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a lot of concerns about this Ethics Committee funding, and that's what my questions are referring to, although no one from the committee will answer those questions. The gentleman from District 1 stated in a town hall, I can't confirm this, but there's video of it, that he was in charge of the finances, and I'm trying to understand.
Mr. Speaker.
Why 60?
Lady from 23.
My understanding was that the issue at hand was the report of the Ethics Committee, not town halls and individual districts.
All right.
Thank
so
you,
there's been an objection, good lady.
I'll get back on track.
The debate is whether or not the whole House accepts the report. So if you will confine your comments to that subject,
Thank you.
You have the floor.
I'm trying to, thank you. I'll go back to my debate. So if you look at your handout that everyone should have, there were 63,000 $985 spent on one lawyer to...
Point of order.
State your point. Gentleman
Mr.
from
Speaker,
Kent.
this is non-germane to the question. It's not an appropriation bill.
Your objection is noted, and he's kind of right here, so proceed with your debate.
Okay, I'm concerned about the money put into this committee to go after a member of this body. And if any of us had $63,000 put against us by a lawyer, coaching a committee, how would you feel? How would that make you feel? And what would you do? And how would you act? And I don't think anyone probably knows the answer to that question. And so that's my concern with the committee. This committee, in my opinion, is taking testimony from another ethics committee and trying to target a legislator.
Mr. Speaker,
Lady from 23.
I would just remind everyone that we're debating a report and we don't want to impugn the motives of a committee or their members.
That is true.
Thank you,
Please confine
Mr.
your
Speaker.
remarks and your debate
But
to the question at hand of whether or not the House should accept the report.
So this does impugn a member. This report in itself impugns a member of this body. To accuse a member of repeatedly lying, half-truths, total disrespect, I don't understand how disrespect, because there's a lot of people in here I don't respect completely. I don't understand how disrespect is a problem with ethics. And if we start going down this road, I think we're in grave danger. We're voting on the merits of a legislator in this body. And I guess I'll get into the testimony that I wanted to share about the caliber of the accused member that we are going after today with this report. Mr. Speaker, I asked permission to maybe read a couple bits and pieces of this report.
The lady has asked unanimous consent to read. Is there an objection? There being no objection, the lady may read, but they can object if it gets...
You bet, and I do understand. So I want to talk a little bit about the caliber of the accused, Lieutenant Colonel Priscilla Giddings. Priscilla's a local gal. She was born and raised in... You bet it is, Mr. Speaker.
Is the gentleman objecting to the lady's reading?
She asked to read, Mr. Speaker, and now she's not reading. This is going to be aided and work with
Use your mic.
So is the objection is based on reading? All right, and our rules are clear on reading, and if there's and we only do that with unanimous consent. If there's one that is objected, then the lady may paraphrase and do whatever and communicate with us without reading it.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State your point.
I did not read, and he's objecting that I am not reading. And so I ask unanimous consent to read bits and pieces. And if you'd like, I will alert you when I will read a little bit. But at this point, I'm not reading.
Is there an objection? Gentleman from 19.
Mr. Speaker, just to clarify, I certainly wouldn't object to reading. The good lady from 1 asked permission to read. She hasn't read. So the people need us to get to work, and this sets a precedent that we ask for permission to do things and then we don't do it. That's a slippery slope, and I think we should just stick to our requests and fulfilling our requests.
All right, I'm going to require the body to get to the point, get to the merits. This is about whether or not we accept
Mr. Speaker.
the report, and if there's extenuating information that buttresses your debate, then go there Make it brief, make it concise, keep it within the rules. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think the rules give me 1 hour if it comes to that, and I hope it doesn't. So, yes, this does have to do with the report because this report is attacking the character of one of our members. And I would like to talk about the character of that member. And that's what I plan to do if it's not objected every 5 minutes. So I want to talk about the caliber of the accused, Representative Priscilla Giddings and also Lieutenant Colonel Priscilla Giddings, who's a Salmon girl, born in Salmon, Riggins, Idaho, just a true Idahoan gal. I don't know if you know she's an author, but she's written a book about a little bit of growing up in that area and what her life was like. But why I want to talk about the caliber of this legislator we're going after is a lot of times in this body.
Mr. Speaker, again, impugning motives. We're not going after anyone. We're considering a committee report. That's what we're doing here.
The lady makes a good point.
So,
The committee, the ethics committee that you helped seat, that everyone in here helped seat, has come back with a unanimous report. So let's not impugn their motives or the process through which, by our rule, a rule that you support, has produced this work product. All right?
You bet.
So,
Mr. Speaker, but we are definitely voting on whether to accept this report or not, which punishes a member of our body.
your point is well taken.
And so if we do not, and unless there's a better time
Point
for
of
me.
order, state your point, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder about the appropriateness of Mr. Speaker, who is a signer on the complaint, being the one controlling the debate.
Well, all right, we will maintain decorum in the gallery, and that means you are quiet and listening. Anything else is non-decorous, and you'll be removed from the gallery. Your point is well taken. Until and unless I'm removed as the speaker, I'll be here at the speaker's rostrum. Lady from 1 to debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just a point of order, is there a better time for me to share my report? Because we're going to be voting on this next, correct?
Yeah, we
Thank you.
will.
So I would like to
there's a
share my
motion.
testimony. Thank you.
The lady is very familiar with the rules. The lady
That's-
is very familiar with the process here. The lady is very familiar with the process. We have a motion before us to accept the report. Debate that motion.
Thank you. So my debate is to not accept this report. And the reasoning why is this report attacks the character of a veteran, a lieutenant colonel veteran, U.S. Air Force veteran in our body. And I want to share my concerns. And I'm not going to get into the committee stuff, but why I think that attacking and impugning the motives of this war veteran is ridiculous. And so that's what I want to share here. So I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going to start back over about the caliber of the accused. Because we don't have to like people. We can be jealous of people. There's a lot of things we can do, but we have to look at this person that we are going after and maybe think there might be something more to this report. So I want to start is that she was born in Riggins, and she's from Salmon, and this gal is a military hero. She is rated and licensed as an airline pilot. She's a King Air BE 300-350 type rating. She has secret clearance with the government. She's a first-class medical CAO. She's an FCC radio telephone operator, and she's a scuba diver. She's a real person that we're attacking today. This
Mr.
Military-
Speaker, please.
Okay, sorry.
There's no attacking.
Okay,
we're discussing a report.
Punishing.
We're
Punishing
debating-
today.
Lady, we're debating the motion.
Yes.
Don't attribute motives to
Okay.
the motion.
So I want to talk a little bit about her work history. An officer of the United States Air Force and an Idaho State Legislator, an outreach squadron lead, Air Force Academy, and an admissions liaison, a pilot for backcountry aviation, an air liaison officer, a flight commander, a mission commander, and I could go on and on. This is the caliber of the person that the committee is saying she was evasive, combative, not forthright in her sworn testimony, did not offer evidence to contradict evidence. Her education includes Air Command and Staff College, Squadron Officer School, California University of Pennsylvania, Air and Space Basic Course, and the Air Force Academy. This is the type of caliber of the person that we're throwing under the bus, in my opinion. I'm going to talk a little bit about her achievements. American Legion Auxiliary Girls State Delegate. I think that's great. A lot of us maybe have gone to Girls or Boys State. She was also a Senate page. She understands.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Jump from 10.
Mr. Speaker, this debate is non-germane. It would be more germane to say, yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man, to the report. But what the good lady has done in the past is non-relevant to whether or not the behavior alleged happened on the occasion alleged. The scope of the conversation should be rightly limited to whether or not the behavior in the expansive report as represented by the committee is in fact what happened, and whether, if it did happen, if it constitutes behavior unbecoming. Previous accomplishments, while impressive, are not relevant.
Thank you. Your point is well taken. And we can continue to go around and around, but
You bet, Mr. Speaker.
Here's the point.
Okay.
Is that the motion is to accept the report, and you can give a character reference up to a point, but once you go past that and calling out the committee as having done something improper because of that's where the line is.
Okay, I'll stick to the character reference.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
State your point.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder about the appropriateness of Mr. Speaker controlling the debate when he is the political opponent of the respondent in this matter.
Well, the gentleman's point is well taken. That's just going to be the fact of your life going forward. Please take your seat. Go ahead, good lady.
So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll continue and try to keep it, tighten it up a bit. So the reason I'm talking about the caliber of this accused, you don't get to these positions, you don't climb up you don't get promoted in the military if you're a repeated liar, a half-truth, a total disrespectful type of person. That is not the type of caliber of person we're talking about. We're talking about a military hero. And that's what I'm trying to get through with sharing some of this stuff. Representative Giddings, just to show a little bit more about her character, she was sent alone as a pilot representing the Air Force to help them transition, helping NATO forces in Europe transition their squads into new systems of training and scheduling for their fighter missions. The trip showed U.S. support to the Polish after losing the missile defense program. That's the type of caliber person we're talking about here. She's broke world records. How many of us in here have broke a world record? World records, and not just one. U.S. Air Force records, 13 to 18-year-olds and 30-year-olds for powerlifting. This is the type of character of the person we're accusing today with our vote, or we're making the decision on for our vote. She was also awarded Idaho's 2018 Outstanding Woman Veteran Award. So here, this body is going to make a decision on the 2018 Outstanding Woman Veteran. She's an author, and probably the most important job, a mother. And that concerns me, marking this woman. This gal's visited 30 countries. She's broke world records. She's participated in triathlons. This is the character of the person we're making a decision to reprimand today, this body. I want to end with some of her awards to just tell you the caliber of this gal. I've been in this body. I'm turning on almost a career politician at this point, 7 years. And I've seen a lot of people come in and out. And I've seen a lot of people that have been here a long time. And I've met a lot of wonderful people. But this is the first legislator that has challenged me to be a better person. And I can't help but wonder how that plays into this decision. Okay, I want to talk just briefly and end this with some of these awards and decorations. And I don't think any of us who aren't in the military get it. We probably just don't get it. It's like, oh yeah, she gets some awards. She wears some stars and stripes and ribbons on her. But every one of those awards that those veterans wear, they mean something. They show the commitment and the fortitude and what it takes to do their job. And this gal does her job quite well. 14 different awards and decorations. And this is I'm going to read this list, and it's quick, but I will read it. Meritorious Service Award, 9 total air medals, Air Force Commendation Medal, Outstanding Unit Award, National Defense Service, 3 deployments to Afghanistan, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Exemplary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Air Force Overseas Ribbon, Exemplary Service, Air Force Longevity Service, and one of my favorites, the Small Arms Expert Marksmanship. 2 weapons, M16 and 9mm. And the NATO Medal. This wouldn't be right to just share the list, because I'm going to share just a few excerpts on what those medals actually mean. This is where I'm going to read, Mr. Speaker, that I've been given permission. Captain Giddings demonstrated...
Mr. Speaker, just as a point of order, is the list that the good lady's about to read, or the section, is that contained within the report, or is that contained within her notes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This.
The lady has unanimous consent to read. So regardless of where she reads from, under the original request, she has the floor to read right up until the time someone takes that back. So go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, that being the case, I would support her reading from the report, but not reading from her notes.
The lady has asked a unanimous request of the body to be able to read. And this would be from what source?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is actually from the report. It's the United States of America Air Medal Report for meritorious achievement while participating in aerial flight. So it's actually reading from a few of the 14 awards. I don't think you'll be disappointed when you hear. Trust me.
Without objection. There's been an objection. The lady can't read, but she may.
This would be painful, thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I will paraphrase. So it might take me a little longer, but I will definitely share this. Okay, so Captain Giddings, superior airmanship and leadership. She flew 30 high priority missions in operating enduring freedom. These were day and night missions under hazardous terrain with the threat of hostile fire. Mr. Speaker, this might be nicer if I read it, but it's up to the good gentleman.
No, it's up to the body. The lady is asking again for unanimous consent to read a short excerpt. Is there an objection? Hearing none, lady.
Thank you, Mr.
Read.
Speaker. It'll be much easier. So Captain Giddings demonstrated superior airmanship and leadership while she flew 30 high-priority combat missions in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. These sorties executed day and night over hazardous terrain and under the threat of hostile fire, provided coalition ground forces with tactical level signals and imagery intelligence. Captain Giddings flew 102 hours of signals intelligence collection on 38 high-value targets and provided real-time target development intellectual to ground forces commanders. Additionally, as Air Warden, Captain Giddings provided time-sensitive inputs to coordinate multiple aircrafts in close air support stack that provided overwatch for helicopter and ground assault forces. This mission resulted in 2 kinetic strikes, 6 high-value individuals detained, and 4 enemies killed in action. That's one of the 14 awards. There's another one with 600 coalition ground forces, which resulted in 30 high-value individuals being captured. There's another with 102 overwatches for helicopters and air support, 29 high-value targets. She destroyed an enemy training camp that led to 95 enemies killed in action. This is the war on terrorism, and while we might not always agree with our government's approach to war, this was her duty, this was her orders. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. This is the caliber of the lieutenant colonel that we are making a decision on today. 990 combat hours, over 2,000 hours in a plane, recently picked by her commander, or her boss, as number 1 of 24 in her squadron to be qualified for the lieutenant corporal appointment, and she, out of 39 majors, was ranked number 2 and just got promoted to lieutenant colonel. That is the caliber. And I know it's nauseating, but this committee meeting, and I sat through it and listened to it, was very long. This ethics committee meeting. And I did not see the substance that I've seen from just printing out a few pages of Representative Priscilla Giddings' background, who she is. So what I read from this committee report and what I see on this individual is 2 different things, 2 different people. And I just wonder, when we make our decision today, do you really know what she did wrong to punish her? And that's what I'm asking you to really think about. The debate has been posting a link to an already published news article. That's why this gal and then being $63,000 put against you in an ethics hearing because you posted a link to a news article in your newsletter trying to educate your citizens. That's why we're going after, or that's why we're making the decision today. Is this wrong? Is this wrong? When she was pulled in front of a committee of our peers who $63,000 and a lawyer were advising. That same lawyer, if you look at your paperwork, that same lawyer has exchanged a lot of funds and campaign donations back and forth.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask that the good lady make sure that she directed us the comments of the report that we're supposed to be determining. Not, again, it's not an appropriation.
Yeah.
It's a report.
Once again, good lady from one, keep it within the lines.
You bet. But, Mr. Speaker, that the committee spent more than $63,000, 63 just on the lawyer. That is part of how we came to get this report, is it not? I mean, that is part of how we came to the conclusion that she should be pulled from her committee.
You have the floor to debate.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's see what else I might have here. I have concerns about the committee and the decisions it made. I don't think they're appropriate. I don't think, I personally think they may be politically motivated, but that's my opinion. That's my opinion. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 34.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House. After reading the report, after sitting through the committee meeting, the Ethics Committee meeting, and the conclusion of it and the final motion, I can't help but draw the conclusion that the House Ethics Committee process is broken. It has turned into a prosecutorial process that once an ethics complaint makes it to the public hearing, the House Ethics Committee lawyers up, hires lawyers who act as nothing more than prosecuting attorneys during the ethics hearing. And that's what we saw. We saw the lawyer asking prosecutorial type questions to all witnesses, including a good lady from District 7, who is the respondent in this case. They expend tens of thousands, $63,000 of Idahoans' taxpayers' money.
Point of order.
Down for 10, state your point.
Again, this isn't a bill to modify the ethics rule. The ethics rule provides for the hiring of counsel by the committee. Therefore, this has absolutely nothing to do whether the conduct alleged truly happened or whether the conduct alleged, if it did happen, constitutes conduct unbecoming. This is a little bit of wagging the dog, Your Honor. Day job, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, I'm just getting started. I will get there.
Well,
committee,
you will within the bounds.
Absolutely.
So please proceed. And
for sure. The committee, throughout the process, demanded deference to the committee. Numerous times, they asked the good lady from District 7 why she didn't just come to the private part, to a private hearing beforehand when there was no requirement to. But because she didn't, they wanted to exact a punishment. The language of the report is attacking in its speech. I can't speak to the motives, but I can read words on a page, and it is attacking in its speech, saying she's combative, evasive, is inappropriate. Calling her a liar in a committee report, I think is attacking and disrespectful and contrary to the integrity of this body. They're attacking a good representative. Idaho deserves better. Idaho taxpayers deserve better. Numerous times it was stated that if the good lady from District 7 came in and did the private hearing, it would get handled. In fact, it was stated by one of the committee members that 95 to 98% of these are handled privately and never make it to a public hearing. I don't know how many ethics complaints there are. Actually, let me ask. No, I'll wait on that. I suspect that the chair will not yield to a question. So I'll just put it out there like this, that if they're saying 95 to 98%, that would imply that with these two public hearings that we'd have somewhere on the order of 40 ethics complaints out there. If there's 40 ethics complaints out there and two of them came public, that's 95%. If there's not 40 complaints out there, it's less than 95%. We have committee members lying in committee hearings. If there are 40 complaints out there, we have bigger problems than this. And the fact that they're all being handled in private gives me concern. Because she didn't go to the private part of the investigation, which was not her requirement, there was no subpoena, it's not part of the rule. She disagreed with their interpretations of the rules on this. Because of that, she gets called a liar. And that was the reason given in committee. Because she had a different interpretation of the rule than one of the committee members, the committee member said that she was lying. And that is not appropriate. She was not lying. She had a different, and I argue, proper interpretation of the rule. Because she did not go to that private hearing part of the process, it was stated numerous times in the committee hearing and in the conclusion of it when motions were made, that if she had only come and talked to them beforehand, this could have been handled privately. If she had only come, if she had only done this or done that, then it could have been handled privately. So I ask you, if it could have been handled privately, but she didn't do that part, is this punishment really about sharing a link, or is it about not paying enough deference to a committee who demands deference? That's what it appears on its face. I wonder if any of the committee members, I can't ask them questions. Apparently they're not yielding to questions today. I wonder if any of the committee members have, in looking at the behavior that they say, may I pause for a drink? They are claiming that sharing a link was unethical somehow. She shared a link to a news story, that the news story included the name of a Jane Doe. It also included a picture. That news story got that information from an attorney who was a former lieutenant governor and attorney general of this state. The release of the information was from that attorney. If you want to talk about doxing, there was the doxing. If you want to talk about secondhand doxing, it was the newspaper article. Sharing a link is not part of that offense. All she did was share a link. They have attributed worst of motives to her behavior. There was no evidence in committee about what her motives were other than her opening statement where she said her motives was to get the truth out there. The committee should have released the entire complaint and the response. They did not do that. That newspaper article was the one place apparently that had the response in it. She wanted full transparency and full truth. That was her motives. That was what's stated in committee, and there was no contrary evidence to that posted in committee. None. She was in a search for truth. The committee members, if it was really that bad of an offense to share a link, you think they would have been going to law enforcement and asking for charges brought against a former attorney general and a news organization. But to my knowledge, they haven't done that. It appears that this committee has been weaponized to go after political opponents.
Point of order.
Jump from 10. State your point.
Gentleman is impugning motives more sharply than the lady from 1 ever did. It drew similar objections.
Mr. Speaker, I did not impugn motives. I said it appears.
I believe that when you say that the committee has been weaponized for political reasons, then they have certainly acted within the rules that we unanimously supported, then that crosses the line into impunity. So proceed without that.
It just appears that way, Mr. Speaker and candidate. There have been dozens of emails in my email box.
Mr. Speaker.
John, cute.
Mr. Speaker,
But
I've gotten
proceed.
dozens of emails in my box in support of the good lady from District 7, an Air Force veteran, and I would argue a war hero. I've only gotten one email on the other side from a Democrat activist group who want to make political hay out of this. She is a war veteran. She's courageous. She has integrity and honor. She was second among the candidate class for lieutenant colonel, and that was recently. This shouldn't be happening. She's a model of integrity and a top-flight legislator. And on top of all this, she's my friend. I know her very well. I know her character. I know how she speaks. I know how she always pursues the truth and exhibits that model to everyone she interacts with. A vote to approve this committee report is an affront to the House Ethics Committee process, which I say is broken. It's an affront to integrity. It's an affront to free speech. She shared a link to a news story. She shared a link. In committee, she was asked about it. She was asked if she had posted it. She did not post. She shared a link. Her responses were accurate. They may not be what the committee wanted, but they are accurate. She is truthful. She's honorable. And if we go down this path, do we really want a House Ethics Committee that is going to review every post that we make on Facebook? One of the questions asked in committee was whether or not any other legislators had made a similar sharing of the link. And because the answer was no, that was reason for that committee member to vote in support of this report. I'll tell you this, I've posted and shared a lot of things on my Facebook that no other legislator has shared. That is not a standard for whether it's appropriate or not. Are we really going to have the House Ethics Committee be the gatekeeper for what is appropriate and what is not online? Do I need to submit my post to Chairman Dixon, the chairman of the committee, every time I want to make a post for fear that I might end up in the same position as a good representative from District 7? This is a dangerous path we're going down. It's inappropriate. It appears that on its face, it appears to be more malicious than it really is. And I think it would be remiss of this body to support that committee report, because this isn't how things should be done in our House. I respect the good lady from District 7. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve any of this. Vote no on the committee report.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, we know that most of us have made up our minds on this, and most of us know that the ethics rule needs repair. Looking at the report, though, if you will, with me, there's some contradictions here that concern me. One is that it says that she did not offer evidence to contradict evidence, and yet it accuses her of lying. If she did not offer evidence, it's pretty difficult to see how she could be lying. She is not free from the consequences of abusing or imprudently exercising. And I'm wondering what consequences, because here it says in the report specifically that it could lead to bullying. It can cause a chilling effect. Not that it did. There was no evidence that these things occurred, but in the committee's determination, these could have happened, and therefore that is somehow conduct unbecoming. The total disrespect of the Ethics Committee. Well, now I understand why. I mean, if I were in the Ethics Committee and you were disrespecting me, I'd definitely want to have some means of enforcing that for the future. But it is about the committee. It's not about posting. I don't even see anything about posting in this report. So if we're going to accept this report, shouldn't it at least be consistent? shouldn't it bear some kind of facts of harm, other than, of course, to the respect of the committee? Evasive, combative. We saw in the previous hearing how evidence was used from private conversations in the public. I can see why anyone would be concerned about sharing that could be used against you, just like a good lawyer will say, don't talk, don't speak. So the report itself is not worthy of our approval. Could have been written to the point. What was she charged with? What were the facts? Instead, we're led to believe that it could have caused a problem, and because of a lack of cooperation, we're going to excise this censure. I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Lady from 9.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to debate against this report. Conduct unbecoming and disrespect, those are two things that are in the eye of the beholder. A lot of times in debate on the floor, and we're impassioned, somebody might think that you're being disrespectful of maybe their own thoughts. We have free speech in America, and we are putting a chilling effect on that free speech with our ethics rule and these committees that we have. Now, I used to be on the ethics committee, and we did solve those ahead of time. This is the first time I remember the previous one that we had early in our session. It's the first time I remember a public committee, ethics committee complaint going the way it was. I was very upset over that because I thought we were with this flawed rule, which desperately needs rewritten. Desperately. That very first trial showed how lacking that rule is. It had never been put to the public test before. And I'm sure many of you have spoken with members of our ethics committee who have agreed that it was lacking. They had to make up their own rules. You all know that in our rule book, anytime a rule is changed, it has to be approved by this body. We can't just add rules willy-nilly. So we put our ethics committee in a very bad situation, I believe, by not having a rule that is clearly written with definitions that does not harm anyone's constitutional rights. I would hope that we do not have any more of these complaints until that rule is rewritten. And I'm very sorry that it hasn't been done while we have been out in the interim to make it correct. There's just one thing I would like to mention about the report. So this information about Jane Doe was released by the attorney, a former attorney general. Now, if he doesn't know the law, I guess no one probably knows the law. This information, as I understand it, was released April the 16th. The complaint about that did not come in to the former attorney general until April the 19th. That is 3 days. And I know that the defendant is Johnny on the spot with getting information out to her constituents. She's probably the best one of us. I mean, I never do a newsletter, so my poor constituents don't know until they send me emails. But that's a 3-day lag. So I'm not quite sure how that the defendant here, our good representative from District 7, could be blamed for this. And because of that, I am not going to vote to accept this report. I think we do a disservice to our entire body by going down this path. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Lady from District 11.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too cannot accept this report, so I will not be voting for it. Besides the information that has already been stated, I also find this rule to be a problem. It's very problematic. The way that things have played out this year testify to that issue. And so I feel that on that basis alone, we cannot continue down this path. In watching the committee hearing or committee, whatever you want to call it, they say it's not a hearing, but it seems like a hearing, that there was contradicting information in the hearing regarding several pieces of information. One had to do with the evidence, if it was received by the representative and how that came to pass. And I'm curious to know, and I guess it seems we're not answering questions today as well, but I would be curious to know if there were any other recommendations that were given as far as consequences. I was always taught that the punishment fit the crime, and while I don't see a crime here committed, because this is something I could easily resolve if one of my children posted something online that I felt was not becoming to them, we could easily work it out just by talking and get that taken care of and not have to go into something so severe. The biggest issue I have, though, too, is in the report, as it was brought out, that the use of the word may causes me concern. It seems that may, it reminds me of a movie called Minority Report. And I don't want to start implementing Minority Report. If you've ever seen that movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if we're going to start trying to future guess things that may happen and punish people according to those things which have yet to transpire, I feel that that is a very slippery slope to start going down. And so I don't want to go down that path. As someone that posts a lot of stuff on social media, to the point where if I don't post things, people start contacting me wanting to know if everything's okay, if I died or something happened. I feel that this is going to become a huge, huge problem. And we're seeing already play out in the media things that are transpiring with other organizations, other people, where now the FBI is raiding their information and taking that information because of putting the truth out there and things that they were given to be able to substantiate evidence and information. And so I feel that that is going to transgress into something that's going to be something that none of us are going to want to have to start dealing with. So I know the caliber and the character of the representative, and none of this report edifies that for me at all. I can't say that any of this is, if you were to just tell me this information without telling me who it is and then ask me, I would say that's not representative of this person that I know. And so again, I can't support this. And again, as it's been brought out, and I just want to reiterate that the information that was released by someone else. It was put into an article, and that information was shared. That's how we share information a lot of the time on social media. We take links We don't control the information that is in the report. We don't control the picture that comes up with the link, and we share it. When information's out there, you share information. And so if our issue is with that, then we need to go back to the source of where that information started from and where it began that process. And so again, I cannot support Minority Report and cannot support this at this time.
Thank you. Gentleman from 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be as clear and forthright and honest as I can be on this issue. First, I support the responsibility that we bear as a body to make decisions about the behavior of our members. I think it's a solemn responsibility, a difficult responsibility, but it's one that we constitutionally are mandated to bear. With that said, I express my full support for the committee report and believe that they did the right thing under very difficult circumstances. These were unique and difficult and trying conditions this year, but I watched the proceedings, I believe the committee acted honorably, honestly, and forthrightly, and provided many opportunities for justice to be served. I'm grateful for the willingness of the committee members to do what they did. It's a difficult situation, but I do support their conclusions, and I support this report, and I support the responsibility of this House to do difficult things so that we might maintain the kind of decorum and behavior that is becoming to the House of Representatives of the Idaho Legislature. For those reasons, I will support the committee's report.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 32.
This ordeal has been pretty taxing. It's pretty heavy in here right now, as I can see. This is my intern, so I should say something, I believe. I don't like what the good lady said from District 7. I didn't like her post when she posted it. I didn't agree with it, but there are many things here that I don't agree with that are said in this body, in this very room or online or anywhere. It doesn't mean that I think a lot of actions are unbecoming. I still support this intern. I hope for her success, and I pray for her success. I do not support this sanction, this hearing. I believe what the good lady said from District 9 is accurate. It's freedom of speech. It was her opinion, and I will vote against this. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 29.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in support of the committee report. The good lady from District 7 knew better. She'd been taught better, and she utterly failed when she made the decision to dox the 19-year-old intern. We have a responsibility here.
Lady from 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. My objection is he's saying that the good lady doxed the Jane Doe, and that is not the case.
That objection, please proceed.
Well,
that is not on the report, Mr. Speaker, and it hasn't even been a
So are
claim.
you saying that I shouldn't allow the gentleman the same leniency that I allowed you?
I'm not saying that, Mr. Speaker.
And
What
the
I'm
gentleman has the
what I'm
floor.
saying is if you're going to talk about the charges, let's talk about what the real charges are and not make up charges that aren't the charges.
Okay, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for a little bit of leeway. This is debate after all. There have been many characterizations on the other side about what this report was or was not. I think it is just as equally fair to characterize the actions of the good lady from District 7 is weaponizing an assault claim against a 19-year-old. Now, you may not like the characterization, but it is accurate. Her name was placed before the public when all she had done was come to people who held positions of responsibility in this body and ask for help. That's all she'd done. She had explained to this body, a representative from this body, that she knew she was to report to that something had happened to her and she needed help. And luckily, that individual took the claim seriously. And we know that because we have reports that tell us that. They took it seriously. They got her help. And then, rather than sit back and find out what happened, like the vast, vast, vast majority of our members did, the good lady from District 7 took it upon herself to decide what had happened here without having a police report, without having interviews, without really knowing what was happening. And so on April 16th, 2021, she made a post. The post itself included a picture of Jane Doe and a link. The attorney, the former Attorney General that more than one member of this body has referred to during this debate, the representative of the now former representative who was accused of sexually, 38-year-old representative who was accused of sexually assaulting a 19-year-old woman. That attorney sent an email to the good lady from District 7 on April 19th, letting her know that unredacted witness information should be destroyed and should not be disseminated. Now, that email came after she had already sent the information out, but it is certainly true that she knew from an attorney that she shouldn't continue to justify that behavior, that even under the law, it was wrong. But furthermore, it's just wrong. The vast, vast, vast majority of the members of this body didn't need to be told it was wrong. We just knew it. When we heard she had done it, we thought, how could you do that? Especially if you, like I've had 19-year-old kids, gone to college, left my house. They weren't very ready to be out in the world. They did their best. They learned from their experiences. But had somebody done something like this to one of my kids? It's wrong. Back in 1987, when I graduated from high school and I went to West Point, I was introduced to a concept called the long gray line. I didn't really know what it was about. I didn't even know I was going to an engineering school.
We don't speak like that on the floor. I object. You should have caught that one.
Sorry, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, I didn't realize I'd used the word. It's my time in the military.
Yeah.
But
I'm not clear on what the objection was.
Oh, I said the word hell.
Oh, the word hell?
The word hell.
Well, that is an extraordinary word that,
I shouldn't have used it. Mr. Speaker, I would make a point of order. We're far outside the contents of the report.
I'm going to allow, we have been outside, and we're going to, frankly, and I believe that the gentleman's point that he's going to make will be every bit as salient as any of the other points. So go ahead.
We were introduced to this idea of the long gray line, and what it stood for was the idea that although we were currently attending West Point, there had been many who had come before. Many who had gone on to careers of distinction. Some had just gone back to their communities. They were business leaders. They were military leaders. Some had died on battlefields. What we knew is that although we were there now, they had once been there. And we had an obligation to them to protect the integrity of the institution. It was not our right to treat it as a plaything, as our own little toy, as something we could use to further our own careers. We had an obligation to the body as a whole, and we took it seriously. And when old grads would show up for football games in the fall, and they would walk around, and we would see them there, we took great pride in making sure they understood that we knew that we had an obligation to the institution and that we were taking care of it. And that same obligation, frankly, goes to those who followed us. And that's why when I'm done at the end of the day, and I usually stay a little later because I've got work to do back home, my law practice takes a little longer. It actually becomes one of my favorite times in this building. When nobody else is here, maybe a security guard, but you can walk the halls and you can look at the pictures of those who have gone before us, and especially on that garden level as you get ready to walk out the doors. And you can see pictures of people who have served long before we were even a gleam in our dad's eye or our mom's eye. They're people that came from your communities, whose greatest pride was being able to say that they had been elected by their community members to represent them here. That's important. That was important to them, just as it's important to us. They weren't perfect, but they knew this job was important. Part of that respect for the institution, for making sure that we treat it as those who came before us would have us do, and those who come after us would have us do, is that we have certain standards here. And that when we have a member who has violated those standards, that we call it out. And that we call it out not just for ourselves, but so that the state can understand, our community members can understand, we have standards, and we recognize bad behavior. This was bad behavior. It was wrong. The good lady from District 7 knows it was wrong. She was taught better at the United States Air Force Academy, the same principles and standards of responsibility and character I was taught at West Point. The same standards those of us who've been in the military understand. You don't earn character by a single event or even in a single year. It's something you have to prove every single day of your life. And if you think you don't have to, try. People know when you failed to show character. That's why the committee report was right, and that's why I'm voting for it.
Is there further debate? Lady from District 8.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd just like to say that I will be voting against the report. And it's ironic and very disheartening that this body would ignore the constitutional rights of one of the most decorated members in this chamber, when during her entire career has been nothing but to protect our inalienable rights. And I think that's the big picture here that we all need to be looking at. I just hope that you all look in your hearts and know that you need to vote against this report. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say something real quick. A couple of folks, a couple of good gentlemen earlier mentioned our duty and responsibility to police one another. One of them referenced the Constitution. Article 3, Section 11 of the Constitution says that we can remove anyone with a 2/3 majority vote. It is silent to censure. I'm of the opinion that I wasn't elected to give you write-ups. If we've got something as egregious as that requires someone being removed, that's fine. But I'm not inclined to be in the business of writing up any of you as if you were one of my employees. You don't work for me, you work for the voters. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Lady from 31.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been hesitant to stand up, but I feel I'd like to share just a couple of thoughts. I appreciate Representative Ruchty's comments about the responsibility that we have to those who come after, and I suppose that's the reason that I'm standing up. You know, we set a precedent here in policy and how we handle business in the House. I've always been a champion of the underdog, you know. If I could pull my elementary school journals off the shelf back home and blow the dust off of them and flip them open, you'd see line drawings of the little boy with his face in the snow while the big boys pummeled him with snowballs. Because I've always had this very strong indignation anytime I see someone who is being unjustly treated, especially when it's by someone else who has more power in that situation than they have. And I take this responsibility to be fair and just to everyone, regardless of whether you like them or agree with them, very seriously. And so, as I've watched these proceedings, I really tried to separate myself from the personalities involved and just to ask some really fundamental questions about what I think is fair and what the long-term impacts of different actions could be. Was there something done that could potentially have caused harm? Was there something done that many of us might have chosen to do differently or disagreed with? Absolutely. And so, you know, I think there's something there. At the same time, I have to ask myself, what was the intent of the person who engaged in the behavior? Did they intend to cause harm? Well, you know, it's interesting how the glasses that we wear affect what we focus on and the choices that we make. One of the concerns that I've long had about our ethics process is that anytime a complaint is initiated, the person who is accused is prohibited from speaking to the public. And so it creates a situation where only one side of the story may be circulated, and the decision may be made before a hearing is ever held in the minds of many people in the public. And so I've had great concern about the possibility of our ethics process being weaponized in an increasingly polarized political environment. So I think this question of intention is an interesting one. And I believe, having listened carefully, that the intention at that time was to moderate that concern that I've just expressed, to provide an alternative view of the situation. Was it the best way to go about it? Probably not. But is that the same thing as saying that there was intent to do harm? The other thing I've thought about is that that link was shared early on. And at that time, none of us really knew the details of what had happened. And so I guess I don't see a deliberate intent to cause harm, and that gives me pause to exercise a disciplinary authority in a situation where someone may not have intended to cause harm. The other question that I have asked myself is, in the long term, is the consequence focused on the original complaint? And I appreciate the emotional reaction that we may have depending on the response of the person who is accused. And I've had people say to me, you know, if there'd just been a contrite apology at the beginning, then maybe we could have all moved on and nothing would have happened. But again, the way a person would respond in a situation like that might depend on whether you feel that you will be given a fair chance. In a situation where a person feels cornered and attacked, they're more likely to respond in a way that reflects that. I don't see, as I look at the discussions, a deliberate intent to lie or to mislead. What I hear is an individual trying to say, I did not deliberately post the picture. I did not deliberately intend to cause harm. I was not the source, the original source of the information. So I acknowledge the work and the difficult position of the committee. They are my friends, and I have great respect for them. I have great respect for the many different types of experience and backgrounds that each of us bring. And at the end of the day, I guess as I'm weighing this myself, where I cannot say that there was clear knowledge and intent to cause harm, I'm uncomfortable erring on the side of justice, and I prefer to err on the side of mercy and hopefully hedge against what I perceive as the possible effects down the road of this kind of action, which is that I do not want to see politically polarized arguments resulting in discipline in this body in ways that has a chilling effect on our ability to represent our unique constituency and their different viewpoints. And so I suppose I will be erring on the side of mercy and voting no at this time.
Is there further debate? Gentleman for 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start out with just an exercise. Without looking at a clock or your computer, think of what time it is. Okay, now you can look at the clock. If you said it was around 10:30 or 10 or 11, and if you told somebody that it's 11 o'clock, is that a lie? This is a very important question. One of the things I have learned in deliberative bodies, both at Central Committee meetings, of which I was an executive member at our county level, and especially here in the House chamber, is that we do not impugn people's motives. Now, in the Ethics Committee, there was testimony given by the defendant that said that she thought that all of the members of the minority party signed on to the complaint. It was later revealed that only 8 of the 12. There was a member of the committee that said she lied. Now, let me read the definition of lie in the vernacular, in the regular dictionary. Lying requires that a person make an untruthful statement. Now let's look at the legal definition. It goes on and says, requires that a person make an untruthful statement with the intention that the other person believe that the untruthful statement to be true. Now, I don't think the defendant purposely made the statement that all of the minority party signed up and that, therefore, that was not a lie. That was her estimation of what had happened. That was not a statement of fact. That was a recollection. Now, if we're talking about impugning character, and we have a member of the Ethics Committee who is supposed to be above reproach as far as behavior, proper behavior in that committee towards a defendant, that title of lying stuck, once it was established, stuck with subsequent statements that the defendant made. Lie, lie, lie. We heard that repeatedly in the Ethics Committee. It's impugning motivation and character. It didn't belong. That shows impartiality from at least one member of the Ethics Committee. They should be above that. That showed their lack of character, not the defendants. It was also stated that the defendant was evasive in some of her answers. Well, if you have two members of the Ethics Committee who are attorneys, and the Ethics Committee hired a third attorney to represent the committee as a whole, and you couldn't afford the defense that is normally given to a defendant in a criminal trial through the public defender's office, wouldn't you be a little bit concerned and very careful about what kind of statements you were made, because you know what the effect and what the intention, I'm being very careful, what the apparent intention of the Ethics Committee was at that time? Of course, you're going to be cautious and careful in the words that you use to defend yourself. So that is not an issue that really needs to be in the report. Lastly, I'd like to also make the statement that has been made before and was reiterated by one of the gentlemen, and that was that the former Lieutenant Governor of Idaho, a 40-year veteran attorney who has served on multiple commissions, also admitted that he made a mistake in sending out an unredacted copy to the press with the same information that the defendant made shortly thereafter. Now, if an attorney and a lieutenant governor is not a good enough source for a person to use as a model for behavior, we're all sunk. We might as well just go home because we don't have any better models than that. So for these reasons, and one last point is that when when the defendant was asked to remove that material, the source that she originally provided the link to had already removed that material, and she certainly couldn't undo the mailings that she had sent out, and certainly her website became moot at that point. The information was already removed. So for these reasons, I think the efforts of the Ethics Committee are totally unfounded, and I will certainly be voting against the report of the committee. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Lady from 33.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, I imagine this has been pretty difficult for all of us. It certainly has been for me as I've read and reread and tried to go back through this. I think it's important to note that certainly our committee had a difficult decision to make. And when this was first brought up through our former colleague, after going through the process, I myself was able and would have been able to vote to expel him. I believe that that was an egregious enough offense. It was clearly defined. It was easily understood. I would have voted to expel our former colleague. And I think that would have been the right thing to do. Many things have been stated with which I agree at this point, and that is, at this point, probably one of my biggest concerns in the action that this body may take, that we truly, the word has been used, chilling, that we truly may find a chilling effect on us and our future use of social media, basically our freedom of speech, our ability to communicate with our constituents. I will say this, I'm not a big Facebook social media person. It is amazing on the things that I post, and I know I don't post like some of you post, how often I'm attacked on things that I think are pretty benign. They absolutely would like to have my stuff taken down. And that concerns me. That concerns me a great deal. And what we do here, I think, may reflect on all of us in the future. The actions that were taken by our colleague from District 7 are not the actions that I would have taken, and many of us have said that. We all have our own paradigm and our own means by which we handle things. And oftentimes, I think the good lady from District 31 also said it best, oftentimes these are handled with private conversations or just simply, that wasn't the best way to handle things. When we take the action of censorship, it's a pretty egregious action that must have preceded it. And in my opinion, at this point, I don't believe that we are living up to that. I also know that there's been accusations that this is politically motivated. Personally, I am not of that opinion. I do not believe that. I don't think it has anything to do with it. These are my opinions, though. I think the timeline for that would prove that it wasn't politically motivated, just like the timeline that has already been mentioned, I think proves that the lady from District 7 also was relying, as has been mentioned, on a former attorney general, a former lieutenant governor that should have known the law, that had given advice that helped, in my opinion, to lead us to this point. And that's very disconcerting. Again, I am concerned that what we will do here will have ramifications on our future abilities to communicate. What are we voting on? Again, the things with our former colleague to me were very concrete, easily understood. Are these things on which we should vote? Or are these things on which our constituents, when it comes time for the election, should vote? Finally, I submit to you that certainly in the world of the pro-family world, of which I do a lot of associations, there is a common phrase used to describe what we feel oftentimes happens to us, and that is, the process is the punishment. And friends, I submit to you today that points and messages that you have wanted to send have been sent. This process has been the punishment. I believe it has been enough. And I would ask that we end it now and that we reject the report, though I am appreciative of our colleagues who have worked on it. Remind me never to be on the Ethics Committee myself, but I would ask that we reject that report, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, friends and colleagues, for all the heartfelt, in-depth commentary. I'll tell you, this is pretty surreal to have that many cameras on you in front of Idaho's best and brightest in this room. And so what to say? I would definitely think I want to start with a quote from Pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a martyr, a spy, gave his whole life in the fight against Nazis. When he said, "God is not a God of emotions, but a God of truth." And I love that because with all my heart, I have given my whole life to fight for truth. So let's start with my concerns with the report, and then maybe just share a little bit of my perspective of what happened for those of you who were not able to attend the hearing or to review it, and then talk about a way forward. So first of all, with the report, just want everyone to know that the first page of the report is what was read across the desk. There's actually 16 additional pages that are part of the report. So some of my concerns there is that they conflict with one another. What was read across the desk and what's in the full report actually do conflict. So let's start with the first sentence in the summary, where it talks about that the public hearing was held pursuant to House Rule 45. The first thing I'd like to point out is going through that whole process. In House Rule 45, it specifically says in Section 4 that the accused shall have a full and fair opportunity to obtain and review all of the evidence in support of the complaint. I will tell you that did not happen. I did not see all of the evidence. I was not given it prior to that hearing. And so in the report, it specifically says that me, was given a full and fair opportunity to obtain and review all of the evidence in support of the complaint. But there's a subscript, number 3, and it says that I was given 3 copies of the rules of procedures that were adopted in advance of the hearing, which stated that the respondent or her counsel must, upon timely request, receive from the committee's counsel all of the evidence in support of the complaint. So what they did there is that they added in the procedures that I needed to ask for it. So let's go back to Rule 45, because nowhere does it say you have to ask for it. So what the committee and their legal counsel did is that they used the Section 7 where it says the committee may adopt rules of procedure for the orderly conduct of the meetings. So they created procedures that were actually in contradiction to House Rule 45. And in Section 7, it says that when they create these procedures, those rules shall be consistent with this rule. And so with that right there, they created a procedure that violated the rule, which violated the other section of the rule. That's concerning to me, because when the report says that it was held in pursuant to House Rule 45, doesn't really mean that. The second concerning thing when you look at this is that it talks about how the first complaint was dropped, and then it doesn't really talk about the actual sharing of the news article. It says, that's not really part of it. So it goes to the next paragraph and it says it's more, her conduct was unbecoming when she was pressed about that sharing the link. So on the first page, it's taking your attention away from the fact that that information got out there. But when you go to the actual report, it flat out says on page 14 that Representative Giddings' social media postings of the individual's name and the photo in the course of the other investigation was conduct unbecoming a member of the House. So which is it? Is it what it says on the first page, that that's not part of it? Or is it what it says on page 14, saying that it is part of it? But when you vote for this, you're voting for all of it. You're not just voting for this rendition. My next concern, the legal implications here, in 2 reasons. One, on the first page of the report, it says her repeated lying. Where I have concerns with this is that in the law, specifically, we have several sections. We've got 184705, 67409. I was subpoenaed. I had to show up based on the law. In 4705, I had to testify based on the law. And I could not refuse to answer a question or it would be a misdemeanor. And that's actually in the law. And it's illegal to lie to the committee. And so if I had actually lied, it would have been a violation of the law, and that should have been in this report. But it's not, because I didn't. They're just saying that they think, in their opinion, that I did. But nowhere legally did I. I do have to laugh a little bit about the evasive remark, because then I could recount stories of you where I went through survival and evasion training just in case you get shot down in combat and become a prisoner of war. There's some great memories there. Being beat up, put in a box, tactics, procedures, techniques on what to do to be evasive. And so with that, I smile and I say, thank you for your taxpayer money on treating and training me to be evasive when questioned by an enemy. One of my other concerns with the way that this hearing happened does come down to the money. I do serve on the budget committee. Where the money goes and where it comes from is very important, and we all know and agree on that. We argued over $180,000 earlier in the session for a certain budget. So when I asked for the receipts, I was really quite surprised to see that the previous hearing cost thousands of dollars less than my hearing, and that hearing lasted longer. And there was a lot more witnesses on both sides. And so, why did mine cost more? I didn't even have witnesses come up and testify. Why did it cost more? So then I start digging a little bit. Because in House Rule 45, it's in Section 6, it says the committee may retain such counsel and may hire such investigators as it deems necessary for the performance of its duties under this rule. And then it says all expenditures incurred pursuant to this subsection shall be approved by the chairman. Goes on to explain, right? And so we have the good chairman who was in a town hall meeting, and he told the public that he approved those expenditures, because that's what the rule says. And where do those expenditures come from? Quick look on Transparency Idaho. You see that those expenditures came from the Legislative Legal Defense Fund. Specifically, on the receipts, you see that it went to the chairman. So he said it, the rule authorizes it, he approved the expenses out of that. I'd now like to read to you Idaho Code, Section 6745-451A. It says specifically regarding the Legislative Legal Defense Fund created, the President pro temp of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives are hereby authorized to make expenditures out of the fund. That's it. It doesn't say the chairman of the Ethics Committee. So we have a problem because the code supersedes our House rules. And the code says the only individual that can approve money out of that Legislative Legal Defense Fund is that gentleman sitting right there. But we have receipts showing and the chairman saying publicly that he violated the law. That's a problem. So then we get into, okay, what happened? And I'm just going to speak to you candidly. You can see I'm not reading this. I don't have it memorized. And every time I repeat it, if one word changes, Lord help me, I am human. But it was that same Friday morning when I found out the same time you did. And I saw the press article, the madam there taking pictures. and it only shared one side of the story. So let's go back to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that God's not the God of emotion, but he's the God of truth. And in those sacred scriptures that we call the Bible, due process is one of the fundamental foundations of biblical truth. And it's one of the fundamental principles that our nation is founded on in our Bill of Rights. Multiple places we have due process. Several places in the Bible as well. This is biblical. It's our foundation. And so when I saw one side of the story being out there, I wanted to know why. And so I dug into Rule 45, where it specifically says that after the committee votes, and it says that the complaint is no longer confidential. That means everything that they're dealing with now is public. And it can be released to the public. I did. I asked the AG. He agreed. Everything that they're dealing with now is public. They voted on it. So I called Legislative Services. He's also I think, retired. Thank you for your service. But he also agreed. It's public. But he didn't have a copy of it. Call the chairman. I did. He wasn't around. So I called the lawyer. Former Attorney General, former Lieutenant Governor. We had a couple discussions. I have the phone records. I think it would have been great if the committee had subpoenaed the actual phone discussions so we can see exactly how that conversation went. And the next time I called that Mr. Leroy, he'd said he'd send it to the press. End of story. There's no law that prohibits him from doing that. Okay? I received the news article later that night, copied the hyperlink from my Android phone, posted it to social media. The next day, I put out my weekly newsletter. I had a link to it. And the reason I liked that article, because it was the only article in the press that shared both sides of the story, which is what's shared and is, I think, the ultimate issue here is due process. When you're going to assassinate someone's character, it is the foundation of our country that says there's got to be both sides. Because if you don't, you have communist China, where you don't get to speak up. If you don't, you have the king and queen who tell you what happens to you. They're called political prisoners. And we're seeing it across this country and now in this world and now in this country. I never would have imagined that we would be seeing political prisoners in the United States of America. That makes my heart cry. And so if there's an opportunity to stand up for due process, I will be the first to do it. And so it begins from there. I really didn't get any information. It was several days later when anybody even mentioned it. And most of you get my newsletter. Nobody mentioned it. So I can probably explain more on the timeline and all the other layers to the onion. But hopefully, the good lady from 31, that helps you understand my intent. You have the email from Mr. Leroy stating that he did actually send it out to the public. So you have that. My next concern, when you look at the first page of the letter, it says they recommend that she be removed from her seat on the House Commerce and Human Resources Committee. I too want to know why that committee. There is certain legislation I've been working on in that committee. Is that why? I hope not. I hope you saw it as one of the least influential committees and the smallest punishment. I think that's what you were thinking, the gentleman from 13. But then I come back to this, is that removing me from a committee, it doesn't hurt me. It hurts the 45,000 people in my district that I will, not represent again in this capacity. This doesn't hurt me. This actually frees up my schedule, and I've got a lot going on. And so then the next thing I think of is, why is it in the letter, the closeout report from the committee, you actually added a prepositional phrase? So we have conflicting reports now. The prepositional phrase that you added was for the remainder of the 66th legislature, because we all know that we're about to sine die. And then we go into the second regular session. In the previous ethics hearing, now we have precedent, they put the duration on the punishment. So the motion in committee did not have a duration. Is this for one day? Is this until we sine die? Is this until next year? And so it's interesting that the committee then submitted a closeout report that added that on. It was almost like a oops, we forgot to mention that. And we had done it before, so that was the precedent, and now we forgot. And now this report took it off again. So it's $1 million question. You vote for this, kind of looks like I can still show up to committee and the second regular session. Because when you go to the rules, it talks about how things close after you sine die. So that's an interesting quandary. Spend 2 hours to vote to have me removed for a week on a committee that may or may not be meeting. That looks interesting. I thank you for your time. It's an honor to serve. I will continue to stand up for due process. I will fight for anyone and everyone when it comes to due process. I will continue to fight for freedom in a nation that is slowly losing it. I would not have done anything differently. I think my intent was pure. But I also know that this is so much bigger than me. I know that nothing I said here today or anything that I have said in the past is going to change your mind. So vote your conscience, and we will move forward, and I will continue to fight for freedom. God bless you all.
If there is another outburst like that, we will clear the gallery. You're forewarned. So you're listening quietly. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 11. Microphone.
Thank you. I actually listened to this point that was in question here about truthfulness. Now, if you listen to that hearing, and to me, truthfulness is telling the exact truth. not evading a question. And that's what I saw happened when that ethics committee was going on. The question was evaded. It was a simple question, but it was evaded. And then I've heard discussion here about, well, what's a lie? Well, is a lie sort of kind of a lie, or is it not a lie? It kind of reminds me of a few years back when we had a president that said, what's the definition of is? Okay? Yeah. If you lie, you lie. If you're not truthful, you're not truthful. And that's really the crux of the issue here. So with that, yeah, I'm going to support the motion because I saw what happened. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Jump from 10.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't planning on debating, but just like Ron White, I might have the right to remain silent, but I don't have the ability. I would just like to point out on the issue of due process, the good lady was offered the opportunity to extend the exact same explanation she just opined before the committee and declined that opportunity. I'd also like to note for the body's consideration that statements made before the committee are subject to the laws of perjury and potential felony prosecution for making misstatements, whereas the statements made from the floor enjoy an absolute privilege from civil or criminal prosecution. And so the body can extrapolate from that what it wishes.
Is there further debate? Lady from 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind the body that when we vote on those members of our ethics committee, it is something that we take very seriously. And we choose those amongst us who we feel are most honorable and most ethical. And they have had a very difficult journey this past year. I know it's not been simple. None of these have been simple, and they have taken this to heart. When we start in this body, we have an opportunity for an orientation, and the first thing that we're told is that everything that we have is a public record, whether it comes in on your phone, whether it's on your computer, whether it's here in the body, it is public record. And we are held to a higher standard than those of our citizenry that we represent here. We are held to the standard that what we do and what we say is important, and we are representing those people at home who care about what we're doing here. It was my understanding when I watched the ethics hearing, and I heard over and over again that the article was not read, that the link was just shared. I did hear the good lady from District 7 say that she wanted both sides to be represented. But we understand we're held to a higher standard, and we were sent an intern to care for in this body. And when we are sent young men and women of this state to care for in this body, I feel that we have the responsibility to care for them at a higher standard. That standard that we expect of ourselves as representatives, that we expect of ourselves representing our districts, that we expect of ourselves on what we say in public media, in our emails, and on our text messages. And I believe that our honorable group of members who served on the ethics committee took that very seriously, and they shared with us what they thought was an honorable way to resolve this issue that was brought to their consideration. And I'm going to support the work of that committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Hearing none? Is there closing required? All right, there being no closing debate required, the debate is closed. The question before us is, shall the House of Representatives accept the Ethics Committee report? Yeah. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. The vote count shows 49 in favor with 19 against and with 2 absent, and the committee's report is adopted. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 13th order of business, miscellaneous and unfinished business. The House is at the 13th order.
The following committee announcements are in order. Representative McCann is assigned to the following committees: Agricultural Affairs, Commerce and Human Resources, Education. Representative Shepard will move from Education Committee to Revenue and Taxation Committee.
Without objection, the House will now return to the 7th order of business, motions, memorials, and resolutions. Oh, we got to go to ease too. All right, the House will be at ease while the clerks catch up with the activities of this morning, specifically all the bills that were introduced. So the House will be at ease. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, do we have an idea of how long that will be?
We predict approximately 20 minutes, and that's in House time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I asked, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, the House will be at ease, subject to call the chair, circle back in 20 minutes.